Good morning and welcome to our 10 minutes at not quite 10 o'clock again today. Today we're going to talk about employing family members in your business as another way of extracting profit from your business tax effectively. So there must be a benefit to doing this. So you need to make sure that there are tax advantages for doing this. It will help to use up some of the tax allowances. So family members who perhaps don't have work in that uses up all of their tax allowances can then use those by being paid by your business. Now, they do benefit from reduced rate national insurances depending on the age. And the advantage of paying somebody from your business and not from your after-tax earnings, of course, is that it doesn't come out of your net pay and you haven't been taxed on it. And generally, it's a tax deductible expense for your business, so it helps to reduce your corporation tax charge. It will also, or should also, save you time on doing jobs that you perhaps haven't got the skill set or the time to do yourself. So what points must be considered? So let's start with the very youngest and say you have children that are aged between 13 and 15. What are the rules for employing those?
Now, this out of all of the employment regimes within child employment has the most rules in it, and there are a lot of rules to look at here. So we're going to look at some of the restrictions on employing staff members between the age of 13 and 15.
Yeah, and you can see that I've shared my screen. So the best place to look at the actual rules that might affect you is on gov.uk. So let's talk through some of those, Harry.
We were going to make notes on this, but there's so many, we thought it's just better just to show you.
Yeah, and if you are going to do it, you need to make sure you follow these and you can demonstrate that you follow these rules. So we'll show you where to go on gov.uk. So if you go onto gov.uk and you look at restrictions on child employment, you should find this page, and let's talk through some of those.
Perfect. So the first one is basically children are not allowed to work without an employment permit. So basically, there's got to be something in place on this basis, and they cannot work in places which are basically detrimental to their health or heavy work. So no factories, no industrial sites, anything like that. They can actually carry out work differently for, say, television contracts and for modelling and jobs like that, but they need to be under license for those. So slightly different regulations work with those. But there are restrictions during school hours. They cannot work during school hours for obvious reasons. And they cannot work before 7 a.m. or after 7 p.m. So there is quite a narrow window if you think about it on a school day. All of a sudden, it cuts out the hours they can actually work.
But it does allow for things like paper rounds, doesn't it?
It does.
So that's where the more than 1 hour before school thing comes into play. So I remember when I was a kid, my paper round used to take about 2 hours before school because I used to do a double one. So you'd have to have a special permit for that now if you were going to do something that long. And what I have noticed when my children did paper rounds is that the paper rounds they did are a lot shorter than the paper rounds I did. In my day, because I'm old, obviously.
It didn't have bikes back then.
Yeah, I walked it with the dog. I used to walk it with the dog. I used to get all my Christmas tips in Bonio and dog treats.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so I was still
they reward the dog, but not you.
No, it was outrageous.
So to extend from this, they also cannot work more than 4 hours without taking a break of at least 1 hour. Which, to be fair, if they're working on a school day, that's not going to be a problem anyway, because you just won't have 4 hours for them to work because they'll be at school. And we need to also consider that in most jobs, there may be some legal issue anyway, so they can't work in pubs and betting shops and anything where there's actually an age restriction anyway. So straight away, that rules out any of those things. And they, as mentioned before, they cannot work in anywhere which is harmful to their health, well-being, or their education.
Yeah.
Which is probably a little bit of a grey area from HMRC's perspective. I guess that would be down to case-by-case basis, but I think we'd know what would be potentially harmful. Don't want to cause them any injuries. And then finally, they cannot work continuously without at least having a 2-week break during the school holidays each calendar year. So at absolute max, they could work 50 weeks.
So let's look at term time rules then. During the term time, children can only work 12 hours a week, which includes 2 hours on school days and Sundays, and a maximum of 5 hours on Saturdays for 13 to 14-year-olds, or 8 hours for 15 to 16-year-olds. So what could a 13 or 14-year-old do? Well, 13 and 14-year-olds nowadays have an immense range of technical skills. Perhaps they could be doing your social media, or they could be helping to create images for you in Canva. They could be cleaning, they could be filing, they could be doing basic office admin. So relatively sort of safe, minimum wage type jobs, but the things that will really free up your time. So
flyers,
scanning,
shredding,
anything like that.
Stuff like that, which isn't as value adding to you as it would be to someone else doing it.
Yeah, anything like that you can just outsource. Now, the challenge I've found is keeping your 13-year-old entertained. So mine weren't terribly excited by the idea of doing the scanning. But when they were that age, they were quite good at coming up with images and things in Canva. So once we'd agreed the template and we'd agreed what we wanted to do, I gave them the content and they went away and created almost social media images, for example. So that saved me an awful lot of time, which I didn't have, but they had. And then it allowed me to pay them, extra pocket money that was tax deductible in the business. So the thing with employing kids or spouses or any other family members is they have to actually be doing something. You can't just pay them and not have them doing anything. That's something that HMRC catch on to quite quickly. In the event that they would come and have a look at it. So you do have to have a commercial justification for paying your relative and have something that they're actually doing. And if challenged, you need to be able to demonstrate that they are doing that.
Then also you've got more rules around school holidays. So during the school holiday, if they're between 13 and 14, they're only allowed to work a maximum of 25 hours a week. But out of that, they're only allowed to work a maximum of 5 hours on weekdays and Saturdays, and a maximum of 2 hours on Sunday. So actually, in theory, if they worked every single day, you'd think, oh, they could actually work for, say, 27, but actually they have to work for 25 as their max. So one to really factor in. And of course, during school holidays, slightly different rules for 15 to 16-year-olds who can only work a maximum of 35 hours a week. Whereby 8 hours on weekdays and Saturdays and a maximum of 2 hours on Sundays. So there's really strict rules on Sunday working hours for this age range.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because that's probably the time you'd want them to do
the work. I know. So, and then you have to look at the types of work that the children can do, which is should be able to find that through your local council's education department. And I think the local council is also where you get the work permit from. I remember when my son had his paper round, he came home with a work permit that I had to sign before he was allowed to do his paper round. So do have a look in, contact your local council if you are going to employ a child in your business.
Yeah.
So lots to think about there.
Lots of thinking points.
But it's well worthwhile if you've got a child who's got skills and can put them to use. It's brilliant experience, and generates great work ethics from their point of view, and it's really tax efficient for you.
Really, really tax efficient.
So what about employing a spouse then? So actually, say you've got a 16 to 17-year-old child. So let's go back to children for a second. If they're 16 to 17 and they've probably left their full-time school, this is a school leaver sort of age, they must be 16 or older to start full-time work, and it's capped at 40 hours per week. They are entitled to at least £4.35 as the minimum wage. So under 16, the minimum wage just does not apply. And in fact, we worked it out earlier, didn't we? They don't pay national insurance. They only need to be on payroll if their total income is over the personal allowance. But given the number of hours that they are allowed to work, it works out something like £20.83 that they'd have to pay before you put them on to payroll. So unless you're really a high payer for your sort of 13 to 14-year-old, then you don't need to worry about that. And it just goes through as an expense in your profit and loss account. When they're 16 or 17, they're entitled to minimum wage at £4.35 an hour. And if they earn more than £118 per week, then you need to process it through PAYE.
Then when they get to the age of 18, they would be classified as an adult worker, and they just receive the same rights as any other employee you would have. Likewise, if they earn more than £118 a week, you will need to process them via PAYE.
Yep.
But fortunately, there is relief on the employer's national insurance due to the national insurance category, which gives them relief for employers' national insurance up to the age of 21.
And finally, employing spouses and partners. Now, we have a number of clients who do employ their spouses or partners in the business, and probably one or two that couldn't work with their partner in a business, and that's something we often joke about when we're looking at tax planning. So if you're going to employ a spouse or a partner, they must have a purpose, they must have a job title, they must have some form of involvement in the business. So you can't just pay somebody and put them on payroll and not have them do anything. So they need to be physically doing something, and they need to be able to demonstrate that to HMRC if you're ever challenged on what they do and how they contribute to your business. So if they're involved in meetings, then name them on the directors, the minutes of the meeting. Perhaps they accompany you to network events or meetings. Perhaps they have a particular set of skills and they offer masterclasses to your clients, or they get involved in your sales process. It could be that they're the ones who are doing the admin, and perhaps they are also skilled in the same type of business that you are and are able to do some work to alleviate your time spent. So, but whatever they're doing, you should be able to demonstrate it, and you should be able to evidence it if you were ever challenged by HMRC. Now, they could also be a director in the company, and this is where things start to get a bit interesting. So if they are a worker in your business but not a director, they should have an employment contract and be entitled to sickness and holiday pay and all that kind of stuff, just like any other employee. And if they're earning over the £118 per week, they should be paid through payroll as an employee. Now, if they are a director, in some cases, directors do have a contract, in which case they are also a worker and they're entitled to all their employment rights. In many small businesses, directors are directors of the company, so they're an officer, not a worker, and then it doesn't matter how many hours you work, and it doesn't matter how much you pay them, because you're not bound by the same rules and minimum wage. So the minute you have a contract, they're bound by minimum wage and employment rights. If you don't have a contract, then they're not at all. So they must be entitled to the same rights as staff if they do have that contract, though. So there's lots to think about there. So we often find that if a spouse is working part-time in a business, then it's perhaps that they're paid to the limit that they have available in their personal tax code. So it might be that they have a part-time job somewhere else, might be that they don't have a job somewhere else, and then you have to look at the affordability of the company, the commercial justification for what you're paying your spouse to do, in line with what you might pay somebody outside the business, unless they don't have a director contract, in which case pay them what you like, and what works for your personal tax situation. So there's 2 or 3 things that you need to factor into that. Mm-hmm. So there we go. That is employing family members in your business. So if you've got family members that currently are not involved in your business and you're looking to maximise the tax efficiency of your business, that is something that you might want to start considering.
Yeah, find a role for them. Find something that's perhaps a pain point or not perhaps the most value adding for you, but actually needs to be done, and find out what they can do. And then you can start looking at the payment options for actually getting them involved in your business. Just bear in mind, there are obviously rules and regulations based on different age ranges, but you can really maximise on this, and then you don't have to pay them as much allowance personally out of your own
after
taxed income. And you can start saying, well, there you go. You want it? Go earn it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works in some relationships, but it's quite nice. I mean, my husband works in my business, so it's quite nice to have that involvement, and he gets the buy-in. He's got a vested interest in the success of the company, and that works really well for us. And then sometimes it works for people, sometimes it doesn't. So food for thought. So thank you very much for joining us today, and if you've enjoyed the video, please let us know in the comments. And if you have any queries about this topic, please let us know and we'll catch up with those a little bit later. And we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks a lot.
Thank you
Bye
very
for
much.
now. Bye.
Now I'm going to give Paul some shredding just for the fun.
That's not going to go down well.